I believe in God, obviously.
Okay, why? And you probably have to define God, because there's, thousands of different versions of Christianity. Give us a rough description of the God you believe in, and then you can explain why.
Okay. Well, God is the one who created the whole universe, who created you and me. And he is the only God that I know that has a son, besides Greek mythology. But anyways,
So we're already into really weird territory, because you say that God is the only God you know of that has a son. How many gods do you know of?
I don't believe in any other gods, but there's other gods that are considered gods, but they're actually false gods.
Okay. How did you determine that yours is the true God and that the other gods are false gods?
Because they're not real. They're actually...
Seriously? They're not real. That's how you determined it. How did you determine yours was real? See, the question had two parts of why do you not believe these other gods and why do you believe this?
Yeah.
And if your reason for believing this is because the other ones are wrong, that's a fallacy. So why do you believe?
Well, number one, it starts with faith. And two...
Why would you believe anything? We're done at number one. We're done at number one. Why would you believe anything?
Faith is a good way to be wrong.
Is there any position that I couldn't take based on faith? If you begin with faith, couldn't I believe all those gods you just dismissed, or couldn't I pick one of those gods you dismissed and believe it based on faith as the primary foundation?
You could, yeah.
Sure. So doesn't that mean that faith is not a good foundation for determining what's true or not true?
Not so.
That's not what it means. So faith can be used to both believe a true thing and a not true thing. And you think that this doesn't demonstrate that faith is an unreliable path to truth?
Well, the Bible says that faith pleases God. Jesus said to Thomas...
I asked a different question. I don't know why you're going to the Bible at all. We're talking about the foundations of epistemology here, about how we determine what is likely to be real. And if your primary method of faith, can lead you both to something that is true and something that's not true, then doesn't that mean that faith is an unreliable path to truth?
No.
I don't understand. If I can flip a coin to make a decision and it can lead me to the correct decision and an incorrect decision, doesn't that mean that flipping a coin is an unreliable path to the correct decision?
Okay, so...
That was a yes or no question.
If you turn your phone...
That was a yes or no question.
Okay, what was the question again?
If I can flip a coin, and based on its outcome, it can lead me to a correct decision and an incorrect decision, doesn't that mean that flipping a coin is an unreliable method to reach the correct decision?
True.
Okay.
Substitute the word faith for coin and answer the same question.
Because you've already acknowledged that faith can lead you to Yahweh and can lead me to Zeus or any of 100 other gods. If faith can lead to any of those conclusions, then how is it a reliable pathway to truth if it can lead me? By the way, let's say there's 1,000 different proposed gods, and only one of them is real. And we can use faith to get to any of them. Then you've got a 1 in 1,000 shot, which is way worse than a coin toss, of getting the correct position based on faith, right?
But there's tens of thousands of gods.
So now does that demonstrate that faith is not a reliable path to truth?
Well, there's also proof. You have proof also.
Hang on.
Let's finish this point, and then we can move on to the next one.
I'll let you go on. I'm not just going to hang up as soon as you acknowledge that faith is a crappy path to truth. I just would like you to acknowledge that the argument's been made and that you agree with it.
Okay.
So is faith a reliable pathway to truth?
To some, no. But to others, yes.
Why are we hedging here?
No, we're done. I promised I would let you go on, but all right. So faith can sometimes lead you to truth.
Correct.
And faith can sometimes lead you to something that's not true.
Yes.
Which means that faith is not a reliable path to truth, right?
You can't just rule faith out like that, though.
The fuck you can.
Okay.
I'm sorry that logic demolishes your position, but that's not our problem. The problem I'm having now is that when you've been exposed to a syllogism, to a logical position that shows that your foundation is flawed, instead of acknowledging it, you want to come up with an ad hoc, you can't get rid of faith that way.
It's dishonest.
It's incredibly dishonest to have your position demonstrably shown to not be reliable, and you acknowledge this and then want to try to rehabilitate it. Now, you're welcome to make an argument for faith is reliable, why faith is reliable in your case. Mm-hmm. But if you aren't willing to acknowledge that faith isn't reliable generally, then I don't know how we continue.
You presented an argument, and I answered questions. There's a difference.
No, I presented a response to your argument, and you dodged the answer over and over until I held your feet to the fire. You wanted to go to the Bible. You wanted to go to any other thing other than answering the question about epistemology, which is completely independent of any religion. How do we reliably find a pathway to truth? Is faith a reliable path to truth?
That was a question for you.
Is faith the reliable path to truth?
I didn't say the, I said a, but I'll go with either one.
Okay. Not always.
Okay, do you understand what not always means?
Sometimes, and sometimes it does.
So therefore it's not reliable, right?
So then it's not reliable, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, thank you. Next.
Sometimes we got to parse the sentences here.
Jesus.
Hey, listen to me though. Listen to me though. If you turn on your phone,
my phone's on.
It turns on. Okay, but why do you think the phone will turn on though?
Because it did the last 10 million times you turned it on.
Yeah.
But how do you know for sure it's going to turn on?
You don't know for sure. You don't know anything for sure. When I push the button,
what do you have?
Carl, when I push the button on my phone, I'm not in any way saying I know for sure this phone will turn on. Because you know what? Sometimes it doesn't. What I'm saying when I push the button on my phone is I have a reasonable expectation of how likely my phone is to turn on based on how many times in the past it has turned on and how many times it hasn't, and that the world continues to be roughly consistent. But I'm not expressing absolute certainty at all. I am apportioning my confidence level in something to the evidence that supports us. This is what Hume taught us about epistemology. The wise man proportions his belief to the evidence. So you want to use this example of how do you know your phone's going to turn on? Well, I'm not saying that I know my phone's going to turn on if you require absolute certainty. What I'm saying is, based on all the information I have, there's a very strong likelihood that my phone will turn on. And you know what? When it doesn't turn on, I don't go, it's a miracle.
God must have done it.
I go, damn, the battery must be dead. There must be something wrong.
There's also an equivocation going on here. You know, when we're talking faith, we're talking belief in something without sufficient evidence. If you've got evidence, present that. You know, if you've got a solid reason, faith is the reason people give when they don't have good evidence.
Yeah, there's no faith involved here. As a matter of fact, we can take my phone and we can put it in a laboratory setting and we can turn it off and we can turn it on and we can do this over and over again and we can determine how reliable this phone is, plus or minus some error percentage, and that is how confident we should be in the reliability of turning the phone on.
Phones exist, on-off
Here's
buttons
a question. How many times have we demonstrated that a God actually exists?
We haven't demonstrated yet.
So, I can demonstrate that my phone turns on at least once. I can demonstrate that it turns on repeatedly. I can put together a probabilistic assessment of my phone. Can we do any such thing for God?
You're comparing natural things with supernatural things.
No,
so
I asked a question. Can I do any such thing for God?
What was the question again? I'm focused on what I have to say. So
your answer is no, which is why you objected by saying I'm comparing natural things to supernatural things. But here's the dirty little secret, Carl. I didn't bring up the phone. You did. You're the one that is trying to falsely compare supernatural things to natural things, as if there's no distinction, as if the faith in the God belief is the same as the faith that I'm turning my phone on. And that is a false equivalency. That's why I asked the question, please, have we ever demonstrated that a God existed?
We have not yet.
Correct. And if we haven't demonstrated this yet, what possible reason could one have to believe that a God does exist?
Yeah, I understand.
Okay, that was actually a question. Yeah, I understand. Doesn't really answer that question. What possible reason could we have to believe that something is true when we have no demonstration of it?
Well, you don't know until it's demonstrated in front of you.
All right, but I didn't ask whether or not you knew. I asked what possible reason could we have for believing it until it's been demonstrated.
Well, if you rule out faith, you don't have a reason.
Correct. And here's the thing. You called us, and you believe. And you begin with a belief based on faith. And you acknowledge
Yeah.
that faith isn't a path to truth, and you acknowledge that we haven't demonstrated that a God believed. And when asked what reason you have for believing it, you go back to faith. Do you not see the problem there?
I see the problem with you understanding.
Okay. What's the problem with my understanding then, since you see that?
Okay. So, if I pray to a God, through my faith, if I pray to God, and my prayer doesn't get answered, should I be discouraged? Or if your phone doesn't turn on, should you be discouraged that your phone doesn't turn on?
How is that in any way an explanation? How is this an explanation of what I don't understand, Carl?
Do what?
How is this an explanation? You said you see my failure in understanding, and I asked you what that was. And you begin with, if I pray and I don't get an answer, should I be discouraged? How is that in any way an explanation of what I don't understand?
Yeah.
That's what I thought. Thanks, Carl. If you tell me that you understand what I don't understand, and the next words out of your mouth demonstrate that you're not actually going to address what it is that I don't understand, but you're going to go on to make yet one more attempt to rehabilitate. Oh, it's faith. Well, it's not always faith. It's reason. Well, if you don't have reason, it's faith. Well, why should I be discouraged just because my prayer wasn't answered? The question here is not whether or not you should be discouraged because a prayer wasn't answered, but whether or not you have any reason to believe that your prayer was likely to be answered in the first place. And if you tell somebody that you understand why, you see the thing that they don't understand, and you don't present that when offered, you're no longer arguing honestly. And it's transparent to everybody who, watch the I don't pay that much attention to it. Watch the comments of this on YouTube. Watch people who actually analyze this discussion. You called us because you were prepared to defend the hard questions about Christianity, and you couldn't even defend the simplest questions, which is, why do you have any reason to believe? Other than to acknowledge you really didn't, but you're not one to get discouraged when prayers aren't answered. We've been arguing about these things forever. There are apologists who spend their entire life training, and these people, some of them, actually have a good understanding of epistemology. There are others who are dilettantes. And then there are people like you, who are convinced that they have a good reason for belief because they've never actually spent time thinking about or discussing how we go about to get to reasonable beliefs, which is why you can begin with, you start with faith. What good is faith? If there's no demonstrable pathway to truth. Hey, gay people are an abomination. I'm just going to take that on faith. Hey, we should vote this way. I'm just going to take it on faith. My phone's going to turn on. I just take it on faith.
An echo chamber of your own mind and your own beliefs and your own biases and your own things that you want to believe, wishful thinking.
The question that we ask has two prongs. What do you believe? Why do you believe it? I put it to you that through that entire call, there was not one demonstration of a sincere attempt to answer the second part. Instead, the first part was just reformed and rephrased over and over again. Here's what I believe. Why? Well, you take it on faith. That's just an assertion that what you believe is believable, or that you believe what you believe. It's not an answer to why. Well, I shouldn't get discouraged if prayers aren't answered. Okay. What caused you to get encouraged in the first place? Was there a prayer answered? Do you have some? And if that was the case, then why didn't you present that at the beginning? Why didn't you say, I believe because the God of the universe is self-evident? When people call you and say, look at the trees, what they're talking about is the obvious elements of nature that scream to the truth that a God exists. And here's how we can present evidence for this, and here's how we can present an argument that shows that the world was intelligent. You're not even a dilettante. What you are is somebody who sincerely believes, and you're so cocksure in your belief that you're willing to call up a show and say, come on, ask me the tough questions, when you haven't even spent time thinking about the easy ones. So do that. Think about the easy ones, find answers, then think about the tough ones, find answers, and then call back and really explain why it is that I'm wrong, what it is that I don't understand. That'd be helpful for both of us. But calling in to say, well, you got to start with faith. I mean, if it weren't for the fact that we can actually have conversations and make points about the unreliability of appeals to faith, I would just hang up on everybody when they called in and made an appeal to faith. Hey, why do you believe in a God? Oh, I just have faith. Goodbye. I'd actually like to get on to an actual discussion. Faith is useless. Faith isn't a virtue.
But this is where a lot of people are. They put a lot of faith in faith to believe. They want to think that their prayers are going to be answered. They want to, they want to say that this investment they've put in their religious belief has not been in vain. That's not a way to the truth. It's not the way to figure out what's going on in the world, and we are better off for it. We're happier as atheists.
Yeah, but I like the call. I like the call because it allows us to get to those points. There's a lot of people who are in that position, and I'd like to think that there are people watching at home who thought that perhaps that was a good answer until it was exposed not to. The one thing we know is that once you've made a public profession of what you believe, you are less likely to change your mind. You are more likely to double down. In the face of expositions of fallacies and poor thinking, you are going to try to find some way to rehabilitate what you think. On the other hand, if you're just going to talk in a circle, and if you're not going to actually give a